Hello.
Hi.
Cool.
So good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's so nice to see your face.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be doing this. Thank you so much for having me here as part of this live stream.
Yes, yes, it's a pleasure. Um, so yeah, welcome everybody. We're here to talk about Edgar, who's one of the artists in Frame by Frame, a book that Giphy Arts has lovingly made for all of you. Um, and my name's Nicky Rojo. I go by they, them. And I'm also one of the artists in the book, and I work at Giphy Studios. So yes, welcome, Edgar.
Thank you. Yeah, so hey everyone, my name is Edgar and I also go by they, them too. And just really happy and excited to be here. Love that I've been a part of this project. The book is so amazing. I'm just so honored to have been selected with so many other wildly talented people, including yourself, Nikki. It's so cool to be a part of this project together.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a pleasure. I'm still like in shock at how awesome this book is, and yeah, everyone in it. It's amazing. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I'm really glad you're part of it. So I loved your art, and I really want to talk about it. Because there's a lot going on there, and so yeah, do you want to talk about your piece? Like there's like a collage thing going on with it, and it's great.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so I think, for my work, I really wanted to create something that felt like it really resonated with where I am right now. I think I'm someone who's been really exploring my different like lineages and where I come from. And, I'm someone who identifies as Latinx and I'm also identify as Indigenous too. And it's only been until my 30s that I started connecting more with my Indigenous ancestry. And so I wanted to create something that honored my Indigenous ancestry and that also honored my other ancestries, my other connections, which is, I'm also queer and trans, and I'm really connected to a big web of like other creative queer and trans folks, and as well as creative like mystics and witches. And so I really wanted to bring all that in. So in the work, there's an image of a person that's like out in the field. For those who haven't seen it, it's like both on Giphy Arts and on my Instagram. So if you want to take a look at it, and it like this person is like having a moment where they're just like receiving downloads, and I wanted to kind of represent that moment that I know some people have experienced where they're like walking by themselves or they're just having a moment of reflection and then all of a sudden they receive some information. And that's how my ancestors have visited me, and both queer and trans ancestors as well as my indigenous ancestors. They both have come to me in different ways, and so wanting to kind of create something that represents that and shows that.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually really wanted to ask you about how you identify with your indigeneity. That's a really hard word to say. English is my second language, by the way.
Same, actually. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
totally
was
get
gonna
it.
ask. But yeah, I'd really love to know about like your heritage, how you came to that connection. Like a lot of us in Latinx have a lot of connection with that, like just physically and historically. And I mean, I'm curious. Because anytime I look at trying to look at like say like Mesoamerican like history, I'm like, where the heck did I come from? Sort of a thing. It's like
Right.
we're all very much like mixed in all sorts of ways, and everyone has a really interesting story. So yeah, I really love to know about yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I can really resonate with what you just shared. I grew up knowing that I was indigenous. Like my grandma, my grandfather, my father are all very like part of like indigenous community, but they grew up in a small town where they had already left their people. And so I grew up knowing that I was from Mexico, knowing that like I knew that my parents were from Zacatecas and Jalisco, And I knew that I was Indigenous, but it was never talked about and it was never really shared. And it was something that, like, for years, I like felt like it was missing. And I've had multiple moments that I've shared a lot about where I like have received like dreams or messages or words where I have felt some guidance and some connection to some ancestors. And it wasn't until my 30s that they led me to a crystal, and it was my partner and I went on some walks together in some mountains near my parents' house. And when we found these crystals, one of the crystals sent me like a message. I'm someone who's very like I receive messages from animals and plants and people and crystals too. And so I was really confused and I spent some time researching and ended up talking to my father. And he very flippantly was like, "Oh, yeah, your grandfather would talk to crystals all the time." And that was like the kind of the moment where finally I felt like there was an opening. And he was hesitant at first, and it took some time. But he finally was like, "Well, we're Indigenous, and we definitely did a lot of those practices, but we stopped doing them when we moved into the village." And so there was like some shame around, Indigenous practices. And I think it's part of why I've been really centering them, because I've been doing them already, and I was doing them with other queer and trans people and like doing them with other witches. And so I was already like in that space and just
Yeah.
really feeling that connection to a deeper ancestry and to like a lineage of spirituality has been such a big kind of big shift in my life, and it's definitely impacted my art so much.
Yeah, yeah. I can totally relate to family being in spirituality. Like, yeah, my uncle does like palm reading,
I love
and he's
that.
really good at it. Yeah, he's really, really good at it. My mom is now like looking at like she retired from engineering and she's now looking into like Ayurvedic zodiac astrology stuff, and I'm like,
Yes.
what?
I love that. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I can just imagine that that's like some kind of like inner calling. Like I also am like super interested in like spirituality and like just metaphysical stuff, that's just going on around us all the time. Uh and yeah, I want to ask you. So like um there's a lot I want to ask you actually.
There's a lot to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, of course. So, how did you get into like energy and divination
Mm.
practices yourself?
Yeah, it was honestly, I was studying abroad, and I did my undergraduate degree at UC Riverside in Southern California. And I studied abroad in England at the school called the University of Leeds in Northern England. And I had a day where I was woken up by my ancestors, and they very directly told me that I was a medicine person and that I needed to like move in that direction. And I was like, well, I'm an art student. Like, I don't know what that means for my life. And I started to study shamanism as like a modality and like started reading about it through different cultures, and I started to see that there is like, people within certain societies that play that role where they're like the intermediary. They're moving between dimensions and worlds and spaces. And then, really close to that time, I also started to meet a bunch of amazing radical queer and trans people that were living in like squatted houses. They were like squatting like abandoned hotels, and like they were like witches, and they were like working, doing tarot work. And it was that was kind of what connected me to like the underground DIY punk scene too. I moved to like different cities like Portland, Oregon, and in Oakland, California. And there's like a big web all over the world of like queer and trans like witches who are doing,
Yeah.
organizing community work, right? And that was like my big introduction. So I definitely feel like my spirituality is very queer, very trans, and very much connected to that lineage too, and also Indigenous and Latinx. And so, like, I really feel like there is a hybridity and a way that, like, all of my ancestors have brought me to this place. And so, when I think of ancestors, I think of it very expansively, of like knowing that we're connected to many different people by blood and by land, and also by spirituality too, by, other more etheric connections.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, there is, yeah, there's so much going on that, isn't really visible to the naked eye.
Right, right.
Um, you've mentioned to us like mutant magic. Can you explain that? I'm really curious.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a word that I use that feels really empowering for me. And it comes from like a pretty like heavy place. It comes from I was living in the Bay Area years ago, and I had like a therapy session where I like saw myself like really stuck, and I wanted to be an artist, and I was working full time. Something I haven't mentioned is that I'm also a licensed therapist, and I've had like over a decade of work as a therapist, as a social worker. I've worked in different capacities, and I had a moment where I like really felt like art was my calling, but like felt, had heard so much from people in my life that it was like a really dangerous path, and that it was like not going to be successful. And so I was in therapy, and like, I had a vision of myself feeling really trapped and stuck, and like felt really like powerless. And at the time, I see them as an angel. It was like maybe a part of myself. It was like a being came to me, and they were like a mutant being, and they were really sacred and shining. And they like came to me and said like, no, you're really powerful. You're really magical. You're a mutant. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a mutant. Yes, I have gifts. I have abilities. And it was this moment of like really shifting my own narrative, my personal narrative, from I have to really believe all these like things I've been told about myself, to really saying like, no, I get to develop a story that feels empowering, that feels magical, that like helps me feel possibility in my life. And that for me is what mutant is. Feeling that change is something really sacred, and transformation is sacred. And I know a lot of people in the queer and trans community, a lot of witches, a lot of artists are constantly evolving and transforming. And I feel like that also to me, I want to like highlight that. And I think mutant is also connected to the freak, to the weirdo, to the person that lives in the woods by themselves. And like I really want to honor that some of us have paths that are very nonlinear and don't look traditional. And I feel like that because I'm someone who's done a lot of things in my life, and I feel like for a lot of people, they'd be really stressed out by the way I live my life of not having one career or not, because it's like I very much have allowed my life to emerge in different ways.
Yeah, it's kind of like you have to just kind of almost listen to your own self in the ways it's speaking to you. I very, very much can relate.
Yeah.
Like I went to animation school and a lot of my friends are very much like traditional, like they're going the route of like they work in TV, they work in all these things, they work in movies, and I am so not like in that. Like I know about it and I know how to work in it, but it's like I don't know, it just like it's not happening that way and I just roll with it, I guess.
It's
So
so good
yeah,
to
I
trust
totally.
that. It's so good to trust that. And I think that's what's really exciting is like it's good to have these skills and abilities. And I do feel like there are things that are emerging that maybe exist outside of or in between different things. And that to me is like really potent energy there.
Yeah, yeah, it's super cool. And yeah, and it's like you were saying, like it is finding that personal narrative that empowers you.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I totally get what you're saying. And like yeah, I think so. The way I'm interpreting you talking about like mutant and freakness and everything, yeah, I feel like that's just like inherent in just being an artist, but like more so in like transness, you know?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. Like I really would love to talk about like how you see like gender and yeah, I've seen you like say gender expansiveness. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I'd also love to hear you talk a little bit about it too, because I feel like you also have stuff to share about it. But yeah, you know, I'm someone that identifies as non-binary, and I think it's been really helpful to have that word and that language. Because I also identify as two-spirit. I identify, as a mutant, so even as like non-human, and I think that expansiveness and like giving people permission to show up as they are is so sacred, and
Yes.
allowing people to share their stories with you and to share who they are, to get to know them like without having like pre-inscribed ideas about who they're supposed to be. Like, I think
Yeah.
I was really hurt a lot by that as a young person, like really feeling like I was such a failure at being a quote unquote man, because I like never fit into that category. And I also
Hmm.
never fit into the category of quote unquote woman. And so like always felt like I was failing at either one. And like to realize that there are other paths and that there are, also like it's such a deep, beautiful history of people who've inhabited our kinds of bodies that we have and our kinds of experiences that we've had. I think that's also what's been really profound is that like it's almost like you're kind of excavating or unearthing a whole history that you've been like kept away from. Because I was not,
Yeah.
told that. I like there's so
Yeah.
many people I was obsessed with as a young person that like I find out later they were queer and or trans or gender expansive and like I'm like, oh wow, like of course I was like so into them, but like no one talked about that.
Right. Especially like a couple decades ago, it was so taboo. Like even now, people think it's like, I don't know, some sort of like perverted thing, and it's like, what world are you living in? So like even like now thinking how people think that way, it's like, no, that is so far off the mark. It's just another way to exist. And it's so possible and it's awesome and beautiful. Um, yeah,
No,
I
and I feel like the more we make space for it, the more people, even like young people, feel safe to identify that way. And like I didn't growing up, as you're saying, decades ago, I did not feel safe to do that. And it's been so
yeah.
amazing to see young folks like feel safe to be that way and also to have it like normalized and be a part of culture now. Like that's been
Yes.
so incredible. Like I'm at UC Berkeley and like every single class, we always start if people are comfortable, obviously, by sharing our pronouns and that is
Wow.
just so normalized now in culture. I'm like, yes, that's so
That's
good.
so amazing. Yeah, I remember like even as like a kid, I'd hear other kids go like, "Oh, like what's wrong with like so and so? They're like a he she." And it's like it really stuck in my head a lot. I'm like, "What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. They just are kind of it took me a long, long time to kind of figure out like they're just kind of living their truth and very openly, and that's
Mm,
great."
yeah, yeah, and it
Yeah,
takes time
it's
to
just
unlearn that if that's like what you're only because that was also my experience was like queer and trans people are people to be scared of or people that are
mhm,
dangerous or like you said perverted or bad and
mhm,
and I think that's like been a big part of my artistic and personal message is that like queer, trans people and gender expansive people are sacred. Like we've inhabited
yeah,
so many sacred roles and that role can be anything. It could be an artist, a creative, a social worker, like that there
mhm.
but we have like a sacred place and also a sacred like history and connection too.
Yeah, it's like what you were saying. It's really allowing, it's really giving that space for people to be themselves. And I think that is sacred too. I think that is so, so important. I have like my own circle of trans friends and like we've just been like enabling each other more and more.
I
And it's
love
just like this ladder. Yeah,
that.
it's great. And just being like our best selves. And I really wouldn't trade it for anything.
And we need that so much, and especially because like when you're forging paths, when you're forging like spaces that maybe haven't existed or have only existed in hidden spaces, like we need to have each other to support each other and uplift each other and like be able to feel that permission. Like I definitely feel that from like queer and trans community and also from my witch community too and my artist community, like seeing people take risks and try stuff out and move their magic into different spaces. Like all that is super empowering. And I love that you use the word enabling, because it is like, it enables you to then dream and step into things and step into your power in ways that feel exciting, that feel like also, well, you're making space for other people too. I think that's like a big part of it, is that we're also leaving a legacy for other people to follow behind as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I wanna talk more, let's see, about about your artwork actually. And so I've noticed, yeah, it is very mixed media. So yeah, I'm kind of switching it up, but like, yeah,
Definitely, yeah.
yeah, I really want to know like your process and like what you're like thinking of, like when you add all these elements. Like I see animals, and I think that's super, super cool. So like, yeah, what do you think when you're doing that?
Yeah, so I have different ways that I make art. I feel art for me is very much a practice of like caring for myself, and I try as much as I can. I know that it's not always possible, but I try as much as I can for my art practice to be supportive for me and to help me process and help me grow, and it's have a space to experiment and also see myself and reflect myself and explore myself. And so I think that's been a part of why I've like connected with so many different mediums, so many different forms of art making. Like I've worked from everything from like flower essences to working with installation spaces or public organizing and public events. And so I've done basically almost every single art practice. I was gonna say except painting, but I think I've been working in painting a little bit too. So, but I think there's always a connection to that, like kind of sacred space of care and play and exploration. Those are things that are really, I feel like, central to my work. And I also have received a lot of information doing divination and being able to receive guidance from them, being able to connect with them. And I think I definitely have had a lot of visions that I've received that I've been able to make into art projects. And so that's also like a big part of like a thing that inspires my work too, is connecting with yeah, connecting with like I think like different energies in that space of play and experimentation, and then seeing how that comes out. And also I think something that I really appreciate about queer and trans culture too is that there's a commitment many times to trying stuff out and to like not having value around like what is seen as successful or failure. Like that's something I've like really like I've seen and heard other queer artists and trans artists talk about failure as like a really beautiful thing, and like that's been really powerful for me too, and it's like really allowed me to explore mediums that I don't feel like I'm good at, quote unquote, right? And just to be like I still deserve to do this, like for example, like I love making music and I don't know if I'm really that good at it, but like I love it so much and really allow myself to make music all the time. And
Yes.
so that's something I really try to encourage, is like art should be like a space to help you process and grow. And because I think being an artist can also be really stressful. It's a lot of emails, a lot of coordinating, a lot of budgeting, and so your practice should be a resource. I feel that's like definitely like how I think about it.
Yeah, it kind of has to be like that. Otherwise, oh my God, the stress would be overwhelming. Yeah. Oh, that's yeah. I definitely can relate. Like I have to really enjoy my work, I think, in order to do it. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that like it's supposed to mean, but it's just how it is, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Art should make you feel good, and I think we don't always have to make art to show other people. Art can also be
Yeah.
something that you do to like really to relax. I've been working a lot with clay as like a relaxing thing, especially because so much of my work is digital. I've been really wanting to connect with other materials and really feel
Yeah.
that touch. I think that's been really important.
Yeah, I actually got into sculpting pretty recently myself. I just moved up to Portland, Oregon, actually.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. I had been living like in LA forever, and it's nice to not be in the desert.
I know, it's so moist there, right?
Yeah, rain all the time. I can get this all the time. That's
And
great.
there's so many plants. Like it's so green in Portland. I love Portland. I lived there for almost like 8 years. So I have such a love for that city.
Yeah, I love it. I love that like people are always like drawing things on everything and like putting stickers on everything. It's just I'm like, yes, my
Yes.
people. But yeah,
So
I went to go
good.
visit a friend like who lives like out in some like Washington forest, and like his friend's mom owns like the house, and there's a bunch of roommates, and like she kind of just made this like art day and like brought Sculpey for everybody, and like
So
she was like, let's make
good.
magnets. I'm like, hell yeah.
I love that. Oh my God, that sounds like so much fun in the woods, especially. Like how relaxing.
Yeah, yeah, it was great.
That's
Yeah.
so good. Yeah, I love that. I love Sculpey. It's so yeah, that's I definitely have had some moments like that with friends too, where we like rent a cabin or we like go to the woods and just bring materials, and
Yeah,
it's like that's a party right there.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, that's my favorite. Like, everyone bring your sketchbooks. We're gonna just go to the park and sketch and talk and stuff. Like, yeah, that's that's my kind of day.
I know it's kind of like a mini artist residency.
Yeah. Oh, Edgar, it's such a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah. Oh my God. Such a pleasure to speak with you. And oh my gosh, I see my friend Sarah Zucker here who just commented, and she's definitely one of those friends that we've gone into the forest. And I see my friend Jory who used to live in Portland also, who we also have gone into the forest. So bless
Wow.
our beautiful queer friends that love to go into the forest and get freaky.
I love it. Oh my gosh.
Hi,
The
yes,
friends are here. Hi.
good to see you.
Well, Edgar, I think it's about time we wrap it up. So like I want to say thank you so so much for coming on and answering all these questions. Like I've learned so much just talking with you for like the last few minutes today, and it's wonderful. Like I feel like yeah, you have experienced so much of life that I could learn as like a fellow like non-binary person.
I
And it's really,
know.
really affirming and comfortable and relaxing to hear personally.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Nikki. And I'm so, so grateful that we've been connected through this project and that we're both a part of Frame by Frame and that we're like also, now connected to each other and hopefully can meet in person at some point. That would be so amazing.
Yes, yes. Let's go to a forest.
Yeah, yeah. I come up to Portland all the time, so we'll definitely let you know when I'm up there.
Great. Oh my gosh, I would love that. Um, yeah, is there anything you want to plug for everyone to know? Like, please, please.
Yeah, if people want to follow me, I have a link tree that's like Linktree and then with my name at Edgar Fabián Frías. That has all my links to my YouTube channel, my different social media, and you can definitely find me on Giphy as Mutant Magic, of course you would understand from my name for Giphy is Mutant Magic. That I have a bunch of really amazing gifts up there too if people want to see those. But definitely also check out my website, edgarfabianfrias.org, if you want to see some more of my art as well. And again, thank you so much for having me. Such a gift to connect with you and chat, and really looking forward to staying connected.
By the way, Edgar has the best self-portrait on their website.
Ah!
It's so rad.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Yeah, my partner took it. My partner Thaddeus took it. So yes, go check out my portrait.
Yes, yes, do it. It's great. Well, thank you so, so much, Edgar. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, a wonderful rest of 2021 and beyond.
Yeah, same with you. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.